Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by wealthy bad guys and poorly trained henchmen. I guess you're going for quantity, not quality. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Straighten Up and Die Right. The hot new Johnny Gossamer novel by Joe Chester is available now at your nearest Borders bookstore. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers, actors, writers. We do a lot of stuff such as music. And we kind of bring all of that into the fold about analyzing, taking apart movies, seeing how they tick, and then poorly putting them back together so that they never work again. At least that's how all my engineering feats went as a kid. What's in there? And then I break it. And I know what's in there. It just does not work anymore.
Typically what happens to me is something will break. I'll take it apart, say, okay, I'm going to take it apart, look to fix this. And I do nothing. I touch a few things, move stuff around, put it back together, and that's it. So I don't know. You go through the process, but it's just like, oh, here we are again. Yes, pretty much.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you know, all the whole process of whatever creation is always its own thing. Like every week we talk about filmmaking, and you know, I've been directing for over 10 years now, from really tiny projects that, you know, I pay for to pretty nice sizable things that clients pay me for. And so a lot of the frame of reference that we do here comes from that. And yet it seems to translate. In fact, you have an album you're about to go into the studio to work on. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, I very much am. I think I've talked about it on the podcast a few times, like that I've been working on this album for the last few years, and I'd stopped playing music for a while and for a few years, and then just started playing around with stuff, and then actually started liking what I was making. Anyway, so I'm finishing it, going into the studio next week, and I spend a whole week with some of my mates finishing it, and yeah, before the podcast we were talking a little bit about what that's like, what that feels like, and I think just for me, and you had some good insights, so I said let's talk about it in the podcast. But just to kind of like put it in context, you know, I've been working on these songs for years, and they're as done as I can make them. I can't do anything else. I feel like that's it. That's my statement. And so to go into a room now with a bunch of other people and have, you know, ideas thrown out, I love that. I want that. And yet I'm a little nervous that I'll come out of it with something that's a little bit bastardized from what I brought in, of no fault of theirs. And honestly, of no fault of mine, because, you know, my goal is to get the best of everyone, and the best idea wins. And maybe that's mine, or maybe it's somebody else's, but I'm a little nervous that, one, will I recognize, because I've been married to this for so long, will I recognize a better idea? Am I going to be married to the demo, right? And then also, what if I try too hard to recognize the idea, and I go with, you know, and I say, yeah, let's spend a lot of time and effort on this idea that you have, but really internally I kind of know that I don't like it, you know, or I know that I'm not going to like it. And you had some really great points that I coming from obviously a different perspective, from a creative perspective, obviously, but a film aspect.
Yeah, it's always tricky working creatively because, like you said, you want people's ideas. You want people to feel free to contribute and make something better than where you began. And the tricky part about it is, for one, being able to recognize if you don't like an idea, to be able to recognize it in the moment. Because like you said, you might go too far and then suddenly, you know, you're walking out the gate and you're like, wait, I don't think I want that. Now you're kind of shivering because you don't know if you have in the can what you actually wanted to put in the can. And then if you are able to recognize it, to be able to shut it down in a way that doesn't discourage future creativity. You want people to still feel free to throw out ideas. And it's really, really hard to be like, yes, I want all your creative ideas. No, that's a bad one. No, that's a bad one. No, that's a bad one. Because, for me anyway, if I hear someone call my idea dumb, you're not getting anything else out of me. I'm out. Like I'm such a, wilting tulip that I just don't feel safe to have bad ideas again, unless you can, say that, yeah, that's not working. I see what you're doing. It's just not right for this one. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. What about blah, blah, blah. And so it's a really delicate dance to be able to, creatively include people without discouraging them at the same time. And then the other trick of it too, you're walking in, like you said, with this demo of everything you've been working on. This happens in films all the time where you're on set and someone's got, the grade up and Video Village. And so you're watching playback with some kind of temporary LUT, which is kind of a quick color pass. And you're watching it on the monitors and you're like, oh, this is good, whatever. And then you get into post and you're editing with that same LUT. And then you get into color grading. Now, look, you've just spent the past, 5 months looking at it in one particular way. How hard is it to suddenly change all the colors? You're like, oh, remember when we set out, we said we really wanted this heavy blue tint. Yeah, but you know what? I really love this natural look that we got going on. Okay, that's fine, but buddy, you hired me to do a thing, and now I'm trying to give you that thing, and you're so ingrained this pattern that you've been watching for the past 5-6 months. This isn't what the emotion that you have to start trusting people's. You have to trust yourself too, to say that this was supposed to be a template. This wasn't supposed to be the final, and so you have a really hard journey ahead of you to be able to reimagine what you created in a way that still is open, it's available, but also finding what was the kernel of truth that you started with. Like it's kind of mind bending to walk in with all that in your head and throw it all away.
That's a great man. Yeah. Color is a great correlator to that, right? Because the color will change the feel of everything just in an instant, just the way that it looks, right? Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that because I've spent so much time with these songs and with the meaning behind them, because each one of them has their own thing. Like it's not just, oh, I wrote a song. No, it's like I wrote a song in the context of other songs. Like it's like a kind of an emotional and ethereal journey, and it sounds corny and very like I don't know, creator esque, but they each have a purpose and they each have a focus, and it is impossible for me to separate that from the songs. It's impossible. Like, so I think it's going to be pretty, not easy, but pretty obvious if something isn't serving that for me. And I think the easiest way around this and being in the room with the people, because I don't want to shut, like you said, I don't want to shut people down. I'm the same way too. I'll give you an idea. If you don't like it, not a problem. I'll give you another idea. If you don't like that, and then a third one, now I'm done. Like I'm a little bit patient, but at the same time, I have my limits.
Yeah.
So, but I think my plan is at the beginning of working on each track, sit down with whoever's in the room and say, this is what this is. This is what I want to feel. This is what this is supposed to make you feel. It's about this. And then go, right? And so now it's not me saying I don't like something. It's me saying, does that serve that purpose? Does it make me feel more or less like this? To me, it doesn't make me feel that, maybe if we took it and we did this or that to it, but so it's actually the purpose that it's supposed to serve, and that it either aligns with or doesn't, not my own personal, like decision making.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that might alleviate me a little bit from decision fatigue, and also like, get me off the hook for being the jerk. for saying I don't like something.
That's huge. I've employed this once or twice in some of my projects where I know I'm going to be collaborating with a lot of people. And so, I might sit everyone down and say, okay, before we write one word on the page, before we start collecting anything, I want to have a thesis statement that we're all going to agree on about what this project is and what it's not. And if we can just summarize it in one short sentence, we'll know if we ever start getting off track. We'll be able to point to this thing and say, wait, this is violating our thesis. And having something like that as a guiding light is so useful. And it sounds like to me anyway, that's exactly what you've done. Each song has its own internal emotion that you're trying to get at. And as long as it's paying homage to that, it can take any form. You'll know really quickly whether or not yes or whoa, this is violating the grain here. So that's really cool,
Dude,
man.
I love that. That is a great idea. I mean, what I just mentioned was a thesis per track, but like an overall, like here's the overall like thesis of the entire project. And then I already have mine per track. Like I know what each one is, but having an overall one, I don't think that I have that. And that might be my nervousness is not having that, because I'm not nervous necessarily about each track, but as a whole, looking back thinking, oh man, we did this on all these tracks and I just wish whatever, that's the nervousness. So I think that's what I need to develop. Hey, look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Little breakthroughs.
Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. What other breakthroughs are we going to have today, man?
Well, we'll see. Today we are looking at Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So if you have not watched this film, please pause the episode and go watch it. We're going to ruin a bunch of stuff.
We'll look at a handful of things at least. Some of the story and writing, the humor, the way they subvert expectations. We'll also pull out a few screenplay snippets and try to see how Shane Black's voice is distinct in his writing and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. After being mistaken for an actor, a New York thief is sent to Hollywood to train under a private eye for a potential movie role. But the duo are thrown together with a struggling actress into a murder mystery. Written and directed by Shane Black, cinematography by Michael Barrett, featuring Robert Downey Jr. as Harry, Val Kilmer as Gay Perry, Michelle Monaghan as Harmony, Corbin Bernsen as Harlan Dexter, and Larry Miller as Dabney Shaw.
Tell us where Harmony is.
Fuck you, Mary.
You don't get it, do you? This isn't good cop, bad cop. This is fag and New Yorker. You're in a lot of trouble. For Christ's sake, who are you protecting? It's all over. Finney, Dexter's going down. I know about Veronica's lawsuit. I know Dexter was facing ruin. I even know he switched daughters, which, for God's sake, actually did work for a while till last week.
Yeah, what happened then? He had to kill her, huh?
Harry, will you put a sock in it?
I'm asking a question.
No, I'm saying, yeah, if you ask questions, then it seems like we don't know anything, like we're fishing, okay?
Right, sure.
And for the record, it was the boyfriend, the guy who flew in from Paris.
He would have spotted the fake and said, that's not Veronica.
Okay? Am I right?
Fuck you.
Oh, he's
Exactly. So Dexter had Veronica killed, threw a dress on her, dumped the body, and walked away clean, except for one little thing.
Underpants.
One tiny little pair of undies. You think that's funny, huh? I'm gonna break your nose now.
Good.
Oh. I want you to picture a bullet inside your head. Can you do that for me?
Fuck you. Anyway, that's ambiguous.
Ambiguous? No, I don't think so.
No, I think he means that when you say picture it inside your head, okay, is that a bullet will be inside your head or picture it in your head, like
Harry,
form an
will you
image?
shut up?
He's got a
Look,
point.
I don't know anything about a girl, seriously. I was bluffing.
You know what? I think that you are bluffing right now.
Harry, what are you doing?
Well, what I'm doing for the guy who likes to bluff is I'm playing a little game called Am I Bluffing? Huh? Where is she? Where the fuck is Harmony?
Harry.
You wanna play hardball? I can do that. Where is the girl?
What did you just do?
I put in one bullet, didn't I?
You put a live round in that gun.
Oh, yeah, there was like an 8% chance. Wasn't it just 8?
8?
Yeah.
Who taught you math?
So, first time watching this?
First time watching this. Yes.
What did you think?
Well, This is the first movie I think that we've done in 222 episodes where I felt like I wanted to just look online and see what people thought before I like gave my assessment or my thoughts, because they're mixed, right? I absolutely adore and love Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer and Michelle Monaghan. They're fantastic in this film. I love them. Anytime any of them are on screen, which is the whole time, I'm just blown away. They're all amazing, and she's gorgeous and does an excellent job. The film itself was so confusing and hard for me to follow, and I don't know if it was because I watched it a little bit late at night or if that's just what it's supposed to be. Like, I literally had no freaking clue what was happening and if it was real. I mean, I didn't really understand that Val Kilmer, I thought he was like some kind of Hollywood director for a lot of the film. There was probably a line that I missed or something. And that he was playing a private eye, or he was helping to train Robert Downey Jr. to be like in private eyeing or whatever it is. Like, I don't know. I missed a lot. And it was like really confusing. And then there was random violence that made it was so random that it made it feel like it was fake. It made it feel like at some point at the end of this, somebody's going to pop up and be like, hey, this whole thing was a test. Harry, and you passed and now you get the role or something. Like it felt fake. It didn't feel real. Which is, it's just weird. The feeling I had after watching it was, I don't know how to feel. And because I obviously want to like it because of who's in it. But the story itself, I did not like. I couldn't follow. I like, there was too much happening too far away from the other thing. It was that was only connecting. For me, I feel like so much was happening and it was very apart from each other. And the only thing connecting them was maybe a little statement that Robert Downey Jr. would make, or a little statement that Val Kilmer would make. And if you miss it, because they talk really fast, and if you miss it, then you have no idea what the connection is. You look at a film that we did recently, like Pulp Fiction, and everything is completely separated. And yet, like, visually, you can connect things. Maybe people are wearing some clothes, right? And you can connect them with some other scene that you've already seen, or that you're going to see, or you see something happen that you also saw happen in another part of the film. Like, it's connected visually. So even if you miss what people are saying, you still connect them. This film, there was no connection for me. And there were so many characters that weren't a part of the story. The boyfriend flying in from Paris, his daughter, who we see like maybe 15 seconds at the party, and hugging him, and or daughter. And it just was like kind of a mess. I mean, I loved watching it because I loved their interactions. RDJ and Val Kilmer, like, I mean, this might be one of my favorite Val Kilmer films. Right, just like performances, I would say. Yeah. He's just so good in it. I just couldn't help but love it. So Robert, Val, and Michelle make this film for me. Everything else pretty much completely falls flat, except for like these random hilarious moments that RDJ goes through. Like when the clip was perfect. When I watched that, I thought, whoa, okay, there's no way that just happened, because he was just so upset about killing the other guy, the other bad guy. And that was a great moment too that he had, where he started breaking down on the phone that he killed a person for the first time. And because that felt real, because it was motivated. Mm-hmm. He killed that girl, and so RDJ got the gun and was like, this is it. Shoots him 3 times. And that was a great scene. I thought he didn't just fall. It was, Harry got to shoot him 3 times before he died. Like, it really, we're killing this MFer. So that it was like very motivated and good. And then his reaction at later was very great and motivated too. So that when he does this and he kills this guy, I'm thinking, there's no way this can be real. He just killed a guy and was like so upset. And now he just killed another guy, and I know he didn't mean to.
Right.
But
which is the whole through line of the intention. I feel bad because I killed a guy on purpose versus, oh man, what are the odds?
Yes. But if he had never killed a guy, I don't know. I don't know. It was just very confusing and hard to follow. And for that, I wouldn't want to necessarily watch it again, but I would watch it again for their performances.
Yeah, no, I agree. I haven't seen this since it came out in 2005. And I remember having the same reaction both times. The first time I watched it and I was like, I enjoyed it. I don't really know what I just saw though. And then even coming in.
I'm so glad it wasn't just me.
No. And then coming in again and I'm like, I kind of vaguely remember, and I didn't remember anything apparently. And watching it again, I was like, what's going on? Because this is one of those films that, as a writer, maybe Shane Black thought the story is simple enough that I can make it very, very messy in order to make it look more complicated than it is. But it's not. It's got enough complication. And I think the crazy part is, I think it would only take an extra 30 to 60 seconds of runtime in order to clear everything up that you need clear. It's, and he has all the pieces in place. Harry is the perfect idiot that you need to repeat things to, and to make sure he's getting it right. And they do that a number of times in the first place, right? Yeah, but did they find her car? Like, no, idiot, we found the car. It was in the lake. He's like, oh yeah, right. Like, he's already kind of doing that stuff. And I just don't think it takes more than a minute of extra runtime to kind of double back and clear some things up. Now, the whole Dabney, Gay Perry being a detective thing, yeah, that might just be a you thing. Like, I don't. Yeah. But otherwise, like the story beats are so, you are really having to focus on everything that's being said. Some things are being muttered under their breath, let alone not repeated. And so, yeah, it's very, very messy and complicated. Luckily, to your point, like, the performances are all so good, and the little moments between the characters are all so charming that it's easy to get caught up in that instead of, being super confused about what's happening and why. And this, I think, is also the kind of movie that invites you to rewatch it. Like, I didn't understand everything, but I had a really good time on the way. So maybe rewatching it, has some extra layers that I can peel back and start to appreciate, because it's all there. It really is all very nice and neat once you understand the story. But without that layer of understanding, it's just so like, who is this again? To your
give you an example of? So you say it would only take a couple of minutes of extra runtime, and I very much agree with that. Let's give you an example. So when he's telling the story at the beginning of how he got to the party, and they're robbing that place, and then they're running away, and the lady shoots his partner, right? And then he runs away and into the audition, and which, it's a little ridiculous, but it's fine. Yeah. He runs in the audition, and then, his audition is he's upset that his partner is killed, right? Well, let me give you an example. I didn't know that his partner was killed. I just saw that he was shot. Mm-hmm. That might be my stupid, I'm a stupid viewer, right? But I can't assume that he's dead, right? He's shot like maybe in the shoulder or something. Give me 10 seconds of me knowing that he's dead, right? Of like,
yeah, I think in that scene, it's more playing with him not knowing as well. And whenever now he's in this audition and someone's telling him, you got your partner killed, it's suddenly like, oh my God, is he dead? And that's the kind of gear we see shift in him go from survival mode of, I just need to get away from the cops, to, oh my God, what if he is dead? I told him to stay in. Yeah. I think the ambiguity might be working in their favor there. As opposed to the girl with the pink hair, like, we don't really know why we're following her in the first place, other than she got in the car. And that's ambiguous about how that ties into the sister. Like, there's just so many running threads that you don't know who's who. Is the girl with the pink hair the sister? Like, at some point, it probably wouldn't surprise me to be like, I thought that she was, and wait, no, the sister's dead. Who is the dead body? The dead body is the daughter of Harlan Dexter. Like, and in some way, I've watched this 3 times over the last week. I watched the movie, I read the screenplay, then I rewatched the movie again. And it probably took reading the screenplay to really start to say, oh, I get it. When everything's slowed down, right, for my speed, things get a lot easier. But that my first rewatch, I was just not clear on who's who and why. I mean, but still, that scene, like I don't know. Yeah, it might have played better not knowing that he's dead, but I never see his face. I don't know who he is. I have no connection to him. So I really have no connection to his performance of his audition either. And it just was like, I don't know. It just didn't feel right. I felt like we needed another piece of information, whatever that is. I don't have to know that he's dead. Yeah. I guess you're right. But I feel like throughout the film, it felt like that. Like, I just need another little piece of information to, like, really understand this. And maybe to your point, it's a rewatch thing. You know, it's a watch it a second time. I think that if you have to read a screenplay to get a film, I think that that's a failed film. I'm just going to go out there and say that. I'm not saying that reading a screenplay doesn't help you understand or like get a film. That's great. But if you have to, like, I don't know, if that helps you get it, then there might be an issue there, I think. Yeah. But I mean, I largely agree. Like, it's really, really fun. The banter is great. The performances, I love seeing all of these characters on screen together. But it does, for me at least, make me really scratch my head because everything is so specific, and they're moving 1,000 miles an hour. But this whole movie is kind of a inside baseball kind of movie where it's a script that's for Hollywood and LA, right? It's highly targeted in a way that it's mocking. And so some films, the prestige films, if you will, do the same thing. Oh, this is a movie about Hollywood for Hollywood, and it's all glamour and glitz and sparkling water. And it's just like, I'm going to throw up, as opposed to this movie where it's mocking it all. Right. There you have these blunt conversations. What do you do? I invented dice when I was a kid. Okay. And the same thing in the bar with Flicka. He's like, I'm a private detective. And she's like, okay. And she walks away, and he's like, go see who else is here. Yeah, I'm gonna see. And he's like, that's it. And she's like, yep. And can I say, I lived in LA, and that is that is on the nose, LA. When that happened, I laughed out loud. I was like, yes, that's so happened to me before. And I think that's the intention here is like, I'm going to write a script and I'm finally going to direct, because this was his first time directing. He'd written tons of, hits, hit after hit after hits. Shane Black is like, can't miss at this point in his career. And so for him to say, I want to really take a chance, I need to write something so specific that only I can direct it. And it's just harpooning everything he knows about Los Angeles and the film community. And it's loving in these kind of backhanded way. Not that anyone should ever take a backhand for love. Like, don't misunderstand me. But I love it. Like, even in the script, it was funny reading it, because there's this the guy in the party, the douchebag that beats him up. In the script, he's labeled an ICM type. And like, if you don't know what ICM is, that means nothing to you. It's a talent agency or whatever, creative agency. And subsidiary, I think, of CAA. And so like you have to kind of know and be in the flow of that landscape. And of course, who's going to be reading the script? It's ICM type of people. Like it's all them. And so to see themselves in the script makes it a lot easier to greenlight. Like, oh man, you got to read this thing. It's so funny. It's taking the piss out of Hollywood in the most loving way possible. And as well as making it, this kind of private eye detective story. And I love I invented dice as a kid, because
was that in the script?
Yeah, that's in the script. Man, you know what's really impressive is how much of what you hear on screen is in the script.
Oh, wow.
It's highly scripted. There's very little that you're hearing on screen that wasn't written out. Like, but the delivery, right? It feels like, oh, they're ad-libbing surely at some points. Not really. No, not very much.
Impressive.
Very impressive. That's really, really strong writing. But the dice comment cracks me up because dice is prehistoric. Like dice has been around longer than writing, than the ability to document it. 6-sided dice, not just like lots or whatever, like actual 6-sided dice. The way we know it is, thousands of years old. And so that little throwaway comment just kind of put me in stitches. And I love the food truck guy towards the end or the middle, like brings out a gun and drops the henchman. That feels like a very LA kind of comment. Like, like if it were Texas, it would be the bartender who grabs a shotgun from behind the bar. But being a food truck guy in the early 2000s in LA.
In MacArthur Park.
Right, yes. In MacArthur Park.
I've been to MacArthur Park and everybody has a gun. It's like the what's the big park in New York? What is it? Central Park. It's like Central Park, but not. Anyway, a little
more ruthless. Yeah, and so this whole script and film is very much playing with all those kind of tropes, not just of Hollywood, but detective stories. And to that point, like humor is such a huge part of this movie. The gift and curse of it is everyone sounds the exact same, right? It doesn't add a ton of specific character depth in the way that they speak or the kind of jokes that they make. It's just, Shane Black. But that's not to say it doesn't actually create some specific character traits, right? Because it reveals Harry is definitely an idiot. He just keeps getting things wrong in all the most, hilarious way possible. At the beginning, he gets corrected for how he uses badly. And then he tries to correct someone else on how they use badly. And again, he gets it wrong. And it's just really, really funny to create jokes around, writing, because this is a writer's movie, and to do it in just this kind of backhanded way. It's really entertaining because it shows that Harry doesn't have a clue. And of course, we learned that early on with his, hollow threat to the ICM type, when he's like, you could try, but that little experiment will fail, my friend. I will beat your ass, and then you just get his ass kicked. But humor also keeps Michelle Monaghan from being just a hot girl on screen, right? Because it would be very easy to put someone like her on screen and make her really smart without any other kind of interesting character traits, because she's solving the case before they do, and she's kind of got a loose bolt or two and rattling around in her head, and so giving her humor allows all that to kind of fully form a three-dimensional character, instead of just kind of creating this nice love interest model that Harry's pursuing. And so humor gives her a lot to do on screen, and she is so good. Really well done. And of course, overall, it just creates a lot of chemistry in your core cast whenever they get to play in the same sandbox and throw jokes at each other. That's a really useful tool to create a lot of empathy. And otherwise, I don't think there's much distinguishing the forms of humor from each other or dialogue in general, because even the henchmen have these really silly jokes. One guy, the clip that we heard, right? He's, anyway, that's ambiguous. Like, why is a guy who's got a gun to his head, cracking jokes? Well, that's just kind of the movie this is. And just the kind of general witticisms and quippy comebacks, they all sound like Shane Black. It's just all him on paper, which is fine. That's not a bad thing. And we'll circle back to that in a few minutes. But another thing it does is it creates more gravity when serious moments happen, right? We're keeping everything so light, and then suddenly Harry's under a bed, and this girl gets shot twice, and then Harry kills the henchman. That's a brutal scene. And it allows it to be more brutal through all the levity that we're kind of experiencing along the way. Because imagine this movie without the humor. Suddenly, that's just another hard moment. Whereas, suddenly you have to lean up, and it's so good to be able to take that breath of like, I'm glad I'm not laughing right now in one sense, because as soon as that moment's over and he cries, and we break away, and then we come back and he's downstairs dealing with his finger, we get right back to the humor through the dog, right? He's eating the finger, and now we're kind of brought back to the levity, and it's like, I can laugh again because I've had a moment to breathe, or at least, step away. Same thing with Gay Perry at the end, right? He gets shot in the chest. That's a rough moment because you're kind of waiting for him to roll over or something, but you also see clearly, and it's this wonderful moment. I thought this was just really good directing, because the bullet strikes him, and the way they frame it is not in the front of the chest, but we see kind of the angle of his back and Harry's chest, and we see the bullet kind of exit the back and hit Harry in the chest. And you're like, and it's a little confusing. It's a little disorienting, because you're like, wait, did that just go through him? And then you see Harry roll over to try to grab him, and he's not responding. And then he tries to give him mouth to mouth, and blood starts pouring out of his mouth. And you're like, oh my God, like Perry's dead. What the hell? This guy I've been laughing with this whole time is suddenly dead, and it just punches you in the gut. And now the stakes really shoot through the roof, because they're much more real now that the humor's gone. And because of that strong contrast, all that lightness is really paying dividends in the serious tone that we're suddenly taking on.
Yeah, that was that was heavy when the blood started coming out of his mouth. I felt that too. Great point.
And the other thing that it does is it allows the humor throughout the film, allows for this meta commentary to take place, right? If the movie's light, lots of humor, then we can start to roll in commentary about Hollywood, films, writing, the voiceover, breaking the fourth wall, without breaking the flow of the film. Instead, it's all kind of one deal, and it's centered around humor and comedy. And the movie isn't taking itself too seriously. And so whenever some things happen, you can kind of laugh at it instead of be horrified. And that's what they're doing with subverting expectations, right? Perry shoots the girl in the head. You don't expect that. It's like, oh, look, her neck is broken. But if you actually start thinking about that scene and how it all played out, Perry killed that girl. Like, full stop, because she was beating on the trunk whenever it was sinking. She was still alive when it went into the water. And it wasn't until he went to open it, because he wanted the key, and he shoots it open, and he inadvertently kills her. And, so when you really stop to think about it, it's like, oh my God, he actually killed her while trying to save her. And so there's a lot of kind of subversion of expectations that are happening throughout the film. Same thing with cutting the finger off, right? I think that's just so good, because we constantly in movies see doors get slammed on people's faces, and they do it in this movie before it happens. There's another scene earlier in the film where she shuts the door in his face, and we're kind of like, whoa, did his finger get caught? Okay, no. And we're just on to the next scene. Nothing happened. Great. Well, they do it again, and she opens the door and like, did I just cut off? We're like, no, we didn't see the finger fly off. And whenever they cut to that close up of the finger on the floor, you're like, oh my God, that's gross. And I just love that as an idea, because torture your characters. Like, why not? What are you saving? If it builds empathy, if it creates tension along with some humor, suddenly like him getting the stitches pulled out, you're just cringing at that. And all it does is really make you lean forward into the film, not away, because now you're reading his emotions much more closely than you were before. And yeah, it just adds a whole new layer of interaction between the audience and the film itself. Same thing, subverting expectations again. This is playing with all kinds of tropes, but at the end he gets shot, and he's like, goes and finds her Harmony on the ground, and she's like, oh, you got shot. He's like, you want to see something cool? And he pulls out the book, and you're like, oh, cute, the book stopped the bullet. And then she puts her finger through the hole. She's like, no, it didn't. And he's like, oh, yep, no, it didn't. Hospital, please. It's just, it's really good, because that's such an eye roll moment of watching a character get shot in the chest, and the pendant stopped the bullet because the pendant represented the love that this other character had. Whatever, like it's a pendant. Like, it's not stopping anything. Yeah. And I love that he uses it and then completely subverts it, because that's so ridiculous. And he builds on, and they recognize those kind of moments too, right? We get into the hospital, and Perry rolls in his wheelchair on the corner. He's like, yeah, I get it. Hollywood gets the notes from the executive saying, oh, it's a little bit of a downer. Everyone, the guy should live. He's like, I get it. Why not bring back everyone? The girl with the pink hair, and those other guys we killed, and then you have like Abe Lincoln and Elvis trying to step into the room. And, he just pushes it a little further than you expect him to. It's really clever. Those are the kind of things that create the charm around this movie, because he's pointing out all the things that are kind of stupid and lame, and then using them in one way or another, either to topple it or to lean into it. Like, yeah, we're going to bring back the guy because why not? I love that. I have one small note before I look at some of the screenplay stuff about the performance. This is something I do with some of my actors, depending on what the scene needs. Which is in that earlier scene that we were talking about, the audition scene where he walks into the room and he's suddenly in an audition, and there's this that moment where everything shifts for him, is when she makes that comment about, or she reads her line, and it's whatever to the effect of, you got your partner killed, and he suddenly is like, whoa, I didn't know. I told him to stay home, right? Everything changes. That's a big moment that we need to feel that shift. And the way you feel it is his head jerks up when she says that line. He reacts to it. And what I love about that, and it's so simple, and it's one of those things actors don't always understand in the moment, that maybe they get it in class, right? And it's like, oh, okay. But sometimes you get on set and there's so many things happening. An actor may not realize, oh, I need to react to this. Well, how do you react to something? It's by giving yourself space in order to create a moment. And for Robert Downey, this is super easy. I do this a lot, is he's looking down at his page. And so that whenever she says her line, he can look up. That's it. That's all you need, is just a reaction, because the normal thing to do in acting is to watch your partner so that you're reacting to what they're saying. But if you need to have a bigger emotional reaction, you need to be looking somewhere else, so that now you can turn your head and there's motion in the camera and you can have a shift in your face. So he goes from just a normal reading face to suddenly he looks up and his eyes are wide and he's gawking and he's stumbling for words. Like, that little shift, just looking somewhere else and looking up, creates all the thing you need to happen in frame. And it's stunningly simple and yet incredibly effective whenever you're just trying to create a moment. Simple things like that. The screenplay was really interesting. I've never read a Shane Black screenplay. I've avoided it because I especially early in my writing, I don't want to call it a career just yet, but even though technically it is, but I haven't sold a feature, right? And so I was learning screenwriting through you're supposed to be reading, at least a few scripts a month, which I'm terrible at in general, but along with writing, I didn't early in my 20s, as I'm starting to learn screenwriting, and Shane Black's name is getting thrown around all the time. I didn't want to go and read his stuff and then want to emulate him. And so because he's got such a distinct voice, I've always avoided it. And now I have my own voice. I'm pretty confident then. So I was like, you know what? I just need to read at least one of his to see what all the fuss is about. Like, what does he do in his scripts? And so it's just really interesting reading his voice, because he does have his own, style that I haven't come across in the, 3 screenplays I've ever read. No, I've read a lot more than that, but it's interesting. One, before I get into the snippets, one thing they changed in the script that I thought was interesting, that isn't obviously interesting, but is the room number. Whenever, she goes downstairs and they're like, yeah, we got a call from room 714. And she's like, no, it's 514. I was just up there. It's terrible. All the noise. Yeah. And in the script, it's not room 714, it's 314. And I just found that interesting for a couple of reasons. One, the original 314, you could look at it in a number of ways. Pi, 3.14 is the first digits of pi. And this is a whole movie about trying to solve a puzzle, and pi is something without a solution. And so just in a vaguely interesting way. The other thing you could look at 314 as is it's kind of 143 is I love you. It's kind of the code for, I love you. And this is I love you, but shifted. Everything's a little bit off. And so I don't know what his intention was, but just think I'm always interested to see numbers in films because of what else they might be pointing at. Yeah. And so I think the reason they may have shifted it was maybe they just needed a room that was higher up to give them a little bit more distance in order to wrestle around with the body, the cops having more time to go down and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But the snippets.
How do you spot that stuff?
Jeez. I don't know. The writing though is always interesting. The term I've always heard, or the bit that I've always heard was, I don't remember if it was like Lethal Weapon or The Last Boy Scout, but in one of his scripts, he writes something to the effect of, in the screenplay, the cops pull up into this parking lot filled with the kind of Lamborghinis and Porsches that we're all going to buy once this movie becomes a smash hit. And it's like, writing that into a script is you're breaking the fourth wall, you're talking to the reader, and you're saying things that don't really have anything to do with the story. Like you're painting vaguely a picture, but you're also being really entertaining. And if your script isn't that, you really can't get away with that kind of stuff. And no one else can write that kind of stuff now because Shane Black has kind of put his, fingerprint on it. And so those are the kind of things I didn't want to get into the habit of idolizing early in my writing career, just because it's so dangerous to do something. And then suddenly people are like, oh yeah, he's trying to be like Shane Black. And now instead of people reading and saying, this is a Wes Evans script, they're thinking, oh, Wes Evans is doing a poor man's Shane Black. Like, no. You don't want someone thinking about someone else's art when they're looking at your art. Like, that's a terrible way to go. You can't stand out that way. And so you need your own voice. So anyway, here's some interesting things that I saw in the script that I thought was just funny and specific. And so this is from page 13. This is early on. This is the whole rope Protocop. His little play on RoboCop. It's the Protocop sequence where she's at home and Protocop breaks into her apartment. And so it starts, meanwhile, no hint of caution by the intruder, clumping footsteps, ponderous. Harmony inches down the hall, reaches a corner, hazards a look. Since departs. Fish grow wings, the cubs winner than 4. Protocop, protector of man, all 6'5" of him, pneumatic joints, robot head, swiveling, impossible. And so just that little line, since departs, like the departure of common sense is what he's saying, right? Fish grow wings, the cubs winner than 4. I thought that's just a really funny way to kind of mentally paint the picture of this is illogical. In no way should Protocop, the guy we were just watching on TV, be in her kitchen. And he's trying to emphasize that for the reader in a way that is just breaking the fourth wall, because in a sense, the Protocop character himself broke the fourth wall by suddenly being from TV into her kitchen. Yeah, I love that. Fish grow wings, the Cubs win in 4. It's like, wait, what are we talking about?
Yeah, fish must be flying if the Cubs are winning.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Yes.
Another one, page 45. Oh, this is funny. He stops hearing Harmony gasp. This is him in the hotel room where she's passed out and the spider's crawling around on her chest and goes into her bra. And she thinks he's looking at her boob or whatever. So he stops hearing Harmony gasp. She's looking down. Harry follows her gaze. She lets slip her bra, exposes one breast. It's there, just visible if you squint. A squished spider leg on her aureole. I think he meant
Areola.
Yeah, it's spelled in a very scientific way. I'm sorry, I don't know all the lady parts or man parts. Trailing buggy fragments. She looks at him radiant. Granted, history has seen more romantic moments. Their eyes lock over the severed leg. She offers a hand. I love this little throwaway. Granted, history has seen more romantic moments. He's kind of commenting on the silliness of romanticizing that. In fact, there was a spider there. Yeah, just a little silly comment. The other thing I noticed in his script, he doesn't overly use slug lines. Slug lines are the thing where it's like interior, hospital, day. That kind of tells you exactly where we are and when. He doesn't brutalize you with those, which I really appreciate, but it's also probably one of those things that frustrates a line producer when they're trying to go through your script and find out how many locations do we need, and how many times are we bouncing around, whatever. Instead, he'll do, so I'll read just a little bit here. Exterior, Lehman Bros, mortuary, establishing night. A transport van backs toward the mortuary doors, arrayed around the van. 4 dudes, all natty in dark suits, ostensibly mourners. Oh, please, drug addicts. Meanwhile, across the street with Harmony, she coasts to the curb, lights off, peers out. And so instead of kind of rearranging the scene in a way that's like exterior, whatever, street, because it's effectively a new location, but he does this a lot throughout the script where instead of cutting back and forth on a phone call, it's just like, oh, whatever, we've established that they're in 2 different locations, bam, 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 bam. But throughout the script, I just saw that he constantly is changing locations. We might walk indoors from outdoors, and you never know it because he just says in the script, and we walk through the door. Normally, you kind of break it up into, say, exterior, house, continuous. He's like, we'll just keep it going. That's a interesting way. Same thing, later in that scene, whenever she steals the whatever, it's not a hearse, but the van with the coffin in it. And I love this. The coffin bursts open, not all the way, enough to admit one trailing hand. This is when the coffin gets flung and it's hanging off the ledge. Enough to admit one trailing hand, one dead girl's hand dangling limp over the freeway, spotlighted, festooned with Christmas lights. Got it? Good. Now let's wind the clock back 5 seconds because another concurrent result of the crash is Harmony flung loose, expelled along with the coffin. Like, I love this little, he's trying to make sure you get it moment, which is the coffin bursts open, not all the way, enough to admit one trailing hand, one dead girl's hand dangling limp over the freeway, spotlighted, festooned with Christmas lights. He's not literally going to put, like, if you watch the movie, there's no Christmas lights, there's no spotlight. He's just trying to make sure we understand that there is a hand dangling outside the coffin, because guess what? Harry, in about 2 minutes, is going to be dangling off that hand himself. That becomes his saving grace, is this dead girl's hand. And so for the reader, he needs to make sure that they understand that there's a girl's hand sticking out of the coffin, and he's just going to belabor it with a spotlight and Christmas lights. Seems like a very Shane Black way to go. Which one is this? This is fun. So this is when Harry is dangling off the ledge, and he's got to make a decision to become ice cold and start murdering everyone. Because, like you said, he goes from I killed a person and having a complete collapse to I now kill people. and that full transition happens here. He shouts out, Harry shouts out, Harmony. Harry's shout, full of pent-up rage, frustration. Another angle, 20 yards uprange. This is another time when we don't cut to a new slug line. It just says, another angle, 20 yards uprange. Actually, he might want to tone it down a bit because his voice carries. The gunman, halfway in the car, stops, looks, and that, brother, is when it all goes to hell. Like, and so he's just like talking to the reader. Yeah, it's a very, very fun read. And I was just really blown away with the fluidity and how everything just kind of pops around, and it's entertaining for the reader while also making sure you're in the flow of the story. It's really, really clever. Harry blinks away rain, gasping. His .38 revolver stayed up above. On the edge, barrel protruding, he casts about, despairing, something, anything. The overpass starts to vibrate. Remember page 5, the thing that began this mess? It's okay, I don't either. In any event, at that moment, a city bus rumbles past. Like, well, the city bus at the beginning is what tangentially pops the cable off the bypass and sends him running because the alarm goes off. And the similar thing is happening now because that's the thing that triggers the gun loose. And that's what he had in the script. In the film, Harry himself becomes responsible for it, which is a better way to go because Harry kind of bounces the coffin that loosens the gun that he suddenly grabs and starts murdering everyone. But in the script, it was the bus, the bus that originally popped off the circuit breaker, letting the siren go off, is kind of the same bus at the end that rumbles and loosens the gun that, you know, becomes the saving grace. The thing that cursed him and put him in this thing is the thing that gets him out. And that's a very, you know, buttoned up way to write it. But it's the difference between good writing and good filmmaking. Because in the film, you want to see your character be their own saving grace. You want to see them be the reason that they get out of it, not luck or happenstance, because it doesn't feel as true watching it happen. It just feels like luck. And so that's a nice change of pace, difference between the movie and the screenplay itself. The last one I have, okay, this is whenever he's still dangling and he's about to fall off the bridge and land on top of the car and start going after it again. Abruptly drops, plunges 5 feet, stops, ka-chuck. Harry's dangling legs, now easy prey. A panel truck clips his foot, jars him. Still, he hangs on, clutching the dead girl's hand, grimacing in pain. He draws down in the speeding sedan, harmony, stirring. And that's when he yells out. He triggers a shot, bang, echoing in the night. Bang, another, nothing. Car window down, gun emerging. And so, drenched in rain, battered and broken, Harry quits playing and simply slays the motherfucker. Bang. I love that. I love that. He's just telling you about the dead eye serious that happens in films, right? Where the guy takes a shot, bang, bang, bang. And then he stiffens his arm. He squints his eyes and he's going to like line up the shot a little bit more. Instead of saying all that, he says, and so drenched in rain, battered and broken, Harry quits playing and simply slays the motherfucker. Bang. It's just a really fun way to engage the writer about the kind of silly aspect of filmmaking, and we know what we're all doing. He makes it entertaining, but at the same time, when you watch it, it plays. It doesn't take away anything to write it that way and then to film it the way that you know it's going to be filmed. Again, that's the difference between writing it and shooting it. Just genius. Yeah, I'm impressed with his writing, man. I knew I would be, and it definitely makes me want to go back and read like The Last Boy Scout. I remember watching that as a kid. I was like, I don't know, 12 when that came out, and I snuck into the theater with my big brother and just freaking loved it. Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans having all kinds of great one-liners back and forth. Yeah, and so I might go back and read that script and watch the film. I own it, and I haven't watched it in a while, so it's due. Awesome. It's due for a cycle. Yeah, that's all. I think I punched myself out.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I imagine you should have a lot because you watched it twice and you read the damn screenplay. Is this what we're gonna do every week now? Are you gonna read the screenplay for every single film that we do?
No, I've debated that. That's one thing I want to do when we do Interstellar again for the 7th time.
Okay, I'll do that too.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you would, because I think that'll be really fun to see what's on the page, and yeah, that'll be really fun.
Absolutely, I will. I mean, I know every word to that film, so I could just read it without watching it and be like, that wasn't in the movie.
Right. Yeah, I've done that with like Dune, where I went back and read it and watched the movie and like, oh, I don't know. I think it's been a weird process of getting comfortable reading scripts because on the one hand, I don't want to read a script before I watch the movie. A friend of the show, Key, really loves doing that. She'll go read a script before she's seen the movie and then go watch the movie. And like, oh, that's interesting. As opposed to watch it, read it, and like, oh, I see what they did. Because I, as a movie lover, I want to watch the movie first and let that wash. But yeah, no, I know you're joking, but I don't think so. But there might be a couple more times where, especially if it's a writer director, as a writer director myself, I think I could probably learn a lot about the way things translate onto screen, because there's a number of things that he changed from the script to the screenplay. The screenplay doesn't open with them as kids doing the magician act. He opens with like quotes, which may have been more for the reader's benefit. But yeah, I don't even know. He might even started at the party or something else. But I thought that's just a really smart way to open the film, because now we've got this image in our head embedded. We don't know what it's in reference to. And then he can kind of point to it, 2 or 3 times throughout the film as a centering point. Like, oh, remember this? Remember this? Yeah, because it was the very first thing we saw. And the ending is completely different. I love the ending in the film. It puts a nice button on it. The movie just kind of ends. Oh, the other thing is Perry at the end of the movie goes and like backhands the dad, right? The dad is dying in his bed and he just goes and berates him. That's so good, because in the script, it's actually Harry. Harry goes back and he almost all the same dialogue. And it's a big change just to have 2 different people doing that same scene, because it feels right. It does feel like a Perry thing. It does feel like something that is true to his character, as opposed to Harry. Harry he doesn't really have those kind of balls. Like, Harry is the guy who wants those kind of balls and he doesn't have it. Instead, in the script, what happens, Perry goes back, rights a wrong. And then the movie ends with them having this conversation to the camera. Like, what are you doing? Stop it. Stop it. No. And he turns the camera off. And it gives us a frame of reference for where all the voiceover was coming from. Because in the script, there is no frame of reference. It's just, the movie just kind of ends. And that's it. Instead, in the movie, suddenly we have a reason why he was talking to us and breaking the fourth wall. Is because he was talking to a camera. And it doesn't really solve everything, but at least gives you the audience a frame of reference of, oh, that's kind of the silly final gag, right? Of the character talking to camera. Cool. Yeah. So there, I think, maybe in some future episodes, it would be fun to look at why some things were changed from the script. And maybe I can avoid making those mistakes in the script in the first place. Because that happens inevitably. You just write things that you can't really film, and you have to rework it in rehearsals, or God forbid, on the day.
Oh,
yeah. Nice. I don't know. Any final thoughts, ideas, cursings?
No, I feel like I would have enjoyed the screenplay more than the film, in some ways, right? I mean, I definitely want to go back and rewatch it just because Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer specifically, I mean, are just amazing in it, and so much fun to watch and to be around, and especially, with Val and what happened to Val. So it's watching it is just like, oh man, gosh, he's in his prime. He's killing this, and that was the most enjoyable thing to me. And then RDJ's delivery of just pretty much everything is so good. I sent you that clip of the Tropic Thunder clip. I think, did you see it on Instagram? It's just like a bunch of clips of his performance in Tropic Thunder, and I'm just thinking, I'm watching it and I'm thinking, oh my, like, how is this okay? How is it accepted? Like, I just don't. Only RDJ can do it. Only, right? There's so many things that only he could do. And Ben Stiller, of course, because I think he wrote that. But anyway, I love Robert Downey Jr. I always have. I've just thought that he's like an interesting guy, because he's always himself, even when he's a character. Like I always is, right? And I think that that's unique and special in its own way. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that he's the greatest actor of all time. It just means that he's very interesting to watch and to experience delivering information in the way that he does.
Yeah.
Whether that's through words or not, or just reactions. I believe him. I always believe him, and that's the first thing. Like, right. If you're an actor, you have to be believable, and then you can be good. Like you can't be good without being believable. So, and then Val Kilmer is just, amazing. Michelle Monaghan was fantastic. But I really like your breakdown of the script in this. I think that really helped me because, throughout it, I just had so many questions, but now, you reading it out loud made me think, oh, okay. Even the guy who wrote it doesn't really understand in some points. He's like, get it? Neither do I. Okay, let's keep going. Like things like that. Okay. And he probably does get it, but just writing that means that he understands if you don't.
Yeah.
And I just wish that would have come across visually in some way, in some moments, but it was still an enjoyable watch, and really liked it. So.
Yeah, it's lightning fast, and I was curious. I'm glad, honestly, that you struggled with it, because again, I've watched this when it came out, because everyone, on screenwriting forums or whatever, were kind of raving about it, and I was like, okay, I'll see what the fuss is. Oh, yeah, that's really funny. I just don't understand what I just saw. I guess I'm the idiot here, and I'll go back into my hole. And so hearing you gives me a little comfort. Like, okay, maybe some people are getting it first time through. Maybe it's kind of like Primer though, where it's a little tough your first time through, but if you appreciate it for the other parts that you do catch, which is all the humor, then on repeat viewings, it all starts to get a little bit clearer, because it's not like I didn't understand anything. It was just so confusing about who was which character. Like the whole, I don't think even after my first watching, this week, I still didn't understand why we were at the clinic, the little, hospital thing, with the underwear and people, in the whatever Can
you explain that?
Yeah. So that is owned by Harlan Dexter. Harlan Dexter owns this, psychiatric ward effectively. And he stashed his real life daughter there because she was fighting him. And still, I don't fully understand, over money. I want to say that's kind of my knee jerk reaction, is ultimately everything is about money. And so in order to swap her out to settle a lawsuit so that he didn't lose his bacon, he stashed his daughter in there because he owns it. He can do that. Hired a double. And now the daughter is being filtered back through there, so that's the body that we find at the end is Veronica Dexter, Harlan's daughter, after she's been killed, and she's going to be incinerated. But before she gets incinerated, for some reason, he stashed her at his own little hospital thing. And that's why everyone's going there, to find the body, to get the proof, the evidence that they need.
But they knew that the inmates just didn't wear underwear, and that was the key. That was the
that was their big revelation. Right. Yeah, it's it's not clean, Todd. It's not.
It's not clean. It's a thing, I guess. Whatever.
I don't know. Maybe
it definitely. So let me just say really quickly, we talk all the time about, I don't want to be handed things as a viewer. I definitely don't. However, there's the line in the sand for me is the where did the T-Rex come from statement. Oh, like camera left or something, right? Which is for those of you who don't know, in Jurassic Park, at the end, there's a scene, and Spielberg famously was asked, "Hey, where's the T-Rex come from?" And he said, "Screen left," or "camera left," or something. And it's just like a understood. Don't worry about that.
That's a detail.
Just be here in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Be in the moment.
Right. And I like that. But right, when you're having to be in the moment and also trying to understand something that's pivotal to the story, right? Because that moment, understanding it wasn't pivotal to the story, but this one, it kind of is. That's the line I kind of have to draw, which is like, that like, if it's pivotal and it's not like, if it's pivotal, there needs to be some kind of explanation at some point in some way. And maybe there was, and I missed it, and I need to just read the screenplay or watch it again.
I don't think so. I think if I were writing this, my logic would be, this is such a flimsy plot point. I don't want to focus on it. I want to focus on anything but the idea that this Hollywood actor is in a feud with his daughter, who he stashed at a psychiatric hospital that he owns, and is going to try and incinerate the evidence. That just all sounds very kooky. Instead, you know what? Joke. Here's some humor.
Joke. There you go. All right.
Yeah,
that's said.
Yeah,
like
exactly. Oh, nice.
Awesome.
What are you going to recommend this week?
Yeah. So I want to recommend a couple things. Well, okay. The film that I want to recommend is a film that is like one of the first films that my son and I like really loved. And I can't believe I haven't recommended it yet, is Wreck-It Ralph. We watched it again last night, and there's just there are two moments in the film that I literally bawl every single time. It's one of my favorite animated films. And the second one is like, whatever. It's like, okay for me, but every time that we watch that movie, my son and I and my daughter, we just like hug in these moments, and we're just like, oh my God. So it's so good in every respect. I absolutely adore that movie so much. So I want to recommend Wreck-It Ralph, and I know this is going to come out post this, but I also want to just say and tell you, there is a comet coming. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a comet coming. It's got this weird number name. And the night of January 31st to February 1st, you should be able to hopefully see it. It'll be bright enough with the naked eye to see it. And it hasn't been here for 50,000 years. Its orbit takes 50,000 freaking years. The last time it was here, Neanderthals were walking around. Like, it is a big deal to me. So I'm gonna stay up late, take my kids out, and we're gonna look at this thing. So sorry if you missed it, if you're just now listening to this episode, but I'm very excited about that.
Nice. Very well done. I was so on the fence because I really wanted to recommend The Nice Guys, which is another recent Shane Black movie with Ryan Gosling and not Clive Cussler. Good God. It's right. Okay. Yeah. Gladiator. Jeez, Russell Crowe.
I forgive you.
Yeah. I last episode I mentioned that I would drop my other podcast that I recently been enjoying listening to. I talked about the Directors Guild podcast. I'm on it today, or whatever it's called. And today, I guess I'll recommend the other podcast that I've been enjoying. It's called Script Apart. It's one screenwriter hosting, and he brings on other screenwriters, and they talk about the first draft of a script and what changed along the way into making the movie. And so the goal is to go back and for him to read the first script and then look at the movie and be like, oh man, so XYZ was in your draft. Why did you change this? Or tell me about the process of making this movie, or blah, blah, blah. And so these are really interesting conversations that they're having. And I have some like qualms, and this is kind of the I don't know if it's the problem with Hollywood, but my frustration with a lot of podcasts and interviews is there's times when he's interviewing someone and it's a bad movie. And I'm like, why don't y'all talk about how it's a bad movie? Like, I know you don't want to like poop on someone's work, and I get that. But if we're here to discuss and dissect and learn, I want to know why it became this negative thing when you clearly set out to make a good thing. There's so much value in that, because I highly doubt a lot of these filmmakers or these writers write something and say, oh yeah, this is going to be a really bad movie. I'm really excited about that. No, but I also don't, expect them to watch the movie and be like, oh, that was so good. Right. Everyone, whatever, Jurassic Park 5, this has just turned out exactly as amazing as I expected. Like, no. Walk us through, why Transformers: The Last Age of Extinction or whatever turned into a poop fest. Was it always going to be a poop fest, or did you start out with something that was gold? Or Prometheus? Like, let's discuss why Prometheus did not go according to plan. And it just frustrates me listening to really, really smarter than me screenwriters that won't point out the gorilla in the room that, this turned into a stinker. Let's analyze that and get better. Let's help everyone that, because he's got an audience of screenwriters. I know he does. And why not? Let's demystify how things become bad. This is one of the things I've always appreciated about Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio. Whenever I first started screenwriting, I was just addicted to their website, and they have like a really good article about how great scripts become really bad movies. And they use their own work. They call it out. They say, hey, I wrote this. And before you go and judge it, here's what I want you to know about the process of making a movie. That's so much more informative, so much more interesting to dive into, because it's acknowledging that art is subjective and that it's really hard to make anything. And if anything comes out good, my God, it's a miracle. And so anyway,
dude, that's so awesome to hear. That, just say that again. Making art is hard, and if anything is good, that's amazing.
Freaking miracle.
So I've honestly never heard that. So whenever I'm making something or you're making, like, we hold our the results of what we make at such high level. How could we ever live up to it? The fact that we're even making anything is awesome. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, forget good in air quotes here. But then if it actually turns out good, how incredible, the stars aligning that in the end result is actually good. Hence loving the process. The more you love the process, the more possible it is to be good in the end, right? Because then you're making decisions based on the art itself because you love it, as opposed to, will people like it? Will I be able to sell this? What's the box office going to look like? No, like, you cannot think about that shit. That is not anything that's ever going to make a good anything. It just, I don't know. I also love, like, one of my favorite writers is Bono. And I think one of the brilliant things about him is that he'll say something I already know in a way that I've never heard.
Yeah.
And I think that's what just happened. You said that, and I thought, nobody's ever said that in that way to me. Oh my God. Like, yeah. Like, the fact that we're even here on this planet is crazy, but the fact that we are making something is amazing. But the fact that if it's even good, like, that's even more incredible. Wow. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, you do have to love the process. And it's why, you're going into the studio, you're the director, and you having a really strong vision of what it is you're trying to do is so crucial, because you're going to be the one thing that either prevents or creates catastrophe. And working on set, whenever I have an idea in my head, and this goes back to our first conversation at the beginning of the episode, I do the same thing where I'll be on set and someone's doing something that I don't want, and 50-50 chance on whether or not I correct it. Like, sometimes I get run over on my set. Just depends on what I'm making. And early in my career, it was probably more 50-50. Now it's probably like 90-10. But I get on the wrong set and I'm making the wrong thing. And suddenly, I go full wallflower, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just back on my heels all of a sudden. A child again on the playground, getting my lunch money taken. And so having a strong vision walking in prevents all the catastrophe, because you already know, like, I've painted this in my head. I know that brushstroke doesn't go there. I like that you think it does. That's cool, but step away from the paint.
Yeah. Well said.
Good effort, team.
Well said. Yeah.
Stay tuned. Next week, we do another request. This one's from Uva. We're going to finally tackle Jerry Maguire. Sorry it took so long, man. We had a backlog and all kinds of things on deck, but we saved the best for last. I think this is the last one. I'll have to check my notes. But yeah, this is I think the last in the queue of requests that we had. Jerry Maguire. Yeah, stay tuned for that next week, and we'll whatever. If you're enjoying the show, good God, it's early in the morning for me. Yeah. Don't forget, subscribe, drop us a review, leave us a note. Something you want us to talk about, kind of things you find interesting. And if you want to leave a note on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/kisskissbangbang.
And our quote of the day is from the incomparable Shane Black. An action film can have too much action. Picture an equalizer on a stereo with all the knobs pegged at 10. It becomes a cacophony and is ultimately quite boring. Yes, absolutely. Because where do you go from there? Right.
Yeah.
I think Bono, I'm going to quote Bono, said it best. Notes are expensive. Meaning the more you add, the more it takes away from what you can do. So I think that Radiohead musically is a great example of that, of using less is more, having dynamics, right? And I think a film is exactly the same way. You know, if you keep everything up here, every Transformers movie is at a 10 every single time, Michael Bay, then where do you have to go? Like, you know, let's do this. Let's ride the wave. Very, very good point.
Too many notes. Yes, that's it. Too many notes.
Too many notes. Yes. This one goes to 11. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like being able to pace your film and action, that might be one of the things that keep, so many B movies from taking that extra step is you cram in so much action, and because we don't care about anything on screen, it all becomes meaningless muck. It's like, oh, cool fight choreography, I guess, but I just didn't care because I don't care about any of these characters, nor do they care about them. You need to spend time with them. Means stepping back from the action sometimes. Shane Black is an interesting guy. I appreciate, his thoughtful approach to writing, even if sometimes it looks like he's just doing all the things all at once. He's a really sharp guy, and I'm still upset that he never stepped in on that first Predator to right the ship. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, man. Thank you for that deep dive into the script. I think that really helped me a lot. And I think the next time I watch a film that I'm not totally getting, maybe I'll go find the screenplay and watch it and see. It's one of those things where if the world gets it, or if you get it, I don't have to get it, but I want to know why I don't.
Yeah.
Totally. That's the thing. All right. I want to know why I have a different opinion. Even if that means that I just have a different opinion, that's fine. But reading the screenplay, I think definitely would probably help. So thanks for that insight there.
Huge. Love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. As Wes said earlier, please subscribe, review us on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and share us with your friends. And if there's a film that you'd like to see us do, please let us know. We love getting your requests. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.